Welcome back. It's time for Perspective. Our focus of discussion today being the World Habitat Day, and specifically we will be looking at the issues surrounding solid waste management, given that is the theme of this particular celebration. And we'll also be going a little bit further in light of the passage of the finance bill. There's the question of affordable housing. How really is this going to work? What is the implementation status, and how the issues surrounding the financing of affordable housing? And for answers to that, I am now joined by the Principal Secretary, who is in the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development. He is specifically in charge of housing and urban development. He will be putting these issues into perspective for us tonight. The questions to ask him are on the numbers 22162. That is the SMS line. Keep them coming on Twitter at KBC Channel 1, my Twitter handle at Kato Achieng'a. Waziri, thank you for coming to our studios tonight.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin.
It's not Waziri, it's PS.
It's PS. We are so used to the ministers and the permanent secretaries, we are yet to still acclimatize.
Right.
But being as it may, let's talk about the World Habitat Day. As we mark it today, what is the status of our environment?
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this day. World Habitat Day, it's a global observance day that is observed every year on the 1st of October. The month of October is a habitat month, so there's various activities that are going to be taking place. Today is the second time that Kenya was hosting this particular event, and every year there's a theme. And so today's theme, or this year's theme, is municipal waste management. Now, the status of our environment, especially on the issues of solid waste management,
yes,
are there to be seen. Most of our urban areas, are buried in garbage and solid waste. So today, our focus was to evaluate what measures have been put in place and what more do we need to do. And also, interesting things that came out is how can you actually turn the scourge into a benefit? Exactly.
How do you turn waste into a profitable affair? So in terms of solid waste management, where are we, what are your plans to try and deal with this, particularly given that we now have the county governments and they're also developing, so there's likely to be a major problem?
So first of all, you're right that solid waste management, it is a devolved function. That is a responsibility of the counties, although national government still maintains the role of providing policy now and also funding. Now, what we have done is we have just embarked on a new program that was launched during the devolution program, which is called the Kenya Urban Support Program. Kenya Urban Support Program is a 30 billion shilling initiative with some financing from the World Bank, and it is geared towards helping the counties to put together county development plans and also to build an urban resilient infrastructure. Now, solid waste management is one of those areas that counties are going to be required to address. So we are encouraging the counties to look at, for example, in Murang'a County, we are embarking on what is called a sanitary landfill, the first one in the country. And that sanitary landfill, after 3 years, the waste will have decomposed and it will start producing gas. Initially, we are going to flare that gas, but we are doing a feasibility to see how we can capture that gas for domestic use.
Do we have infrastructure to perhaps, invest in terms of recycling some of the solid waste money?
So, again, what we are saying is that even the resources that we have put aside are not sufficient.
Yes.
And that is where we are saying, how do we leverage these resources, but how do we then bring in private sector to do the investment? In countries all over the world that have managed to tackle the issue of waste, they have turned some of it waste to energy. And some of that waste is also being turned into fertilizer. So it is actually being turned into an economic activity. And that is what we are encouraging the counties to embark on such initiative. Of course, with the resources that we have, but let the private sector be the one that builds, operates, and transfers these particular initiatives.
Okay. Let's focus on, urban development and the question of housing, which is, on every Kenyan's lip, the affordable housing.
Right.
Before we even get to what really is affordable housing, in terms of the status, what is the status of how many housing units do we have and what deficit are we looking to fill?
So Vision 2030, our long-term national strategy, envisions that our housing deficit is 200,000. So our housing demand is 250,000 a year. Of the 250,000 a year, 80,000 is what is earmarked for high-end. That is for the 3% of those who can afford. 170,000 is for what we're calling affordable range. Now, the statistics are actually pretty bad. On the high end, the 80,000, we are producing roughly about 49,000 a year.
So we are not even meeting the 80,000.
Yes, but we're doing better than, if it's an exam, you get, you'll get a C+, and it's above 50 and you'll go to university. But when it comes to affordable housing, it's not even an F. It is a complete disaster because we're only doing 1,000 houses a year against 170,000.
That is for those who are not able to afford?
Those who are not able to afford.
Okay.
And that has translated itself, and I think it is there for everybody to see, in the informal settlements. And when you go to the informal settlements and you look at how majority of our people live, then we then have to agree that something has got to be done. That's number one. Number two, let's talk what is in the law, right? The Housing Act.
Before we get to the Act, the question I want to know is, how affordable is affordable? When we talk about affordable housing, I mean, what do you mean? So
affordable is not a phenomenon that has been coined by Kenya. So it is there all over the world. So what does affordable mean? Affordable means that no household should be forced to spend more than 30% of their disposable income, on housing, and not just housing. So it is, housing for your electricity and for your water, right? Those basic essential services, you should not be spending more than 30% of your disposable income. So our program is actually geared towards ensuring that families do not spend more than 30% of their household income on housing. Now, so you asked about statistics. Our statistics, again, on mortgages, for those that can afford. First of all, we have 25,000 or less mortgages, bank mortgages. Of the 25,000, 17,000 are mortgages that are banks advance to their employees, which are subsidized. The balance, it means that the rate of mortgage to rent, mortgage is 4 to 6 times more than what the rental is. So it shows that there's a systemic problem in our society that needs to be addressed. In advanced country, that ratio is normally 1 to 1. So we need to close that gap.
So how does this policy seek to change that?
So let's, before we get to the policy, let's first of all state what is in the law. So the Constitution, Section 43, actually mandates and imposes a responsibility on government to provide housing to the citizens. So we have a responsibility to provide housing. Number two, we can disagree on how.
We'll talk about the financing in just a
but
bit.
we do have a responsibility. The Housing Act, Cap 117, which is probably older than all of us here, right? It was passed in 1967. Also envisions, right, that right towards housing. It established a fund called a housing fund. Section 6 established it. So that is what is in the Constitution, and that is what is in the law. So some of these things are not new. It is only that
the implementation
has not happened. And I know we're going to talk about Kibera, but some of the projects that we have now implemented before as government, they take too long, all right? The cost is very high, and that is why my mandate that I have been given by the president, all right, is to ensure we provide housing, but we do not add a burden to the fiscus.
But how will you convince a common Kenyan who, perhaps saw what happened with Kibera? There were supposed to be affordable housing projects. The next thing we saw, it was only those who could afford who were buying those houses.
So that is not true. And I want to ask, especially you in the fourth estate, do a bit more due diligence. Let's not just accept a whole lot of stuff that is going out there, which is not true. Just fact check.
But there were houses that were supposed to be built.
There are houses.
Yes.
Okay. When we get time, another time, I'm going to send you clips of people who live there. Go there to Kibera. In fact, we will like to take you. So let me tell you what happened to that Kibera project.
Yes.
It was started in 2004, okay, during the first NAC government. Now, it took almost 10 years to complete. We did 822 units.
Yes.
Of the 822 units, we have got single-roomed house going for 600,000 shillings. Because of the government intervention, people are paying 2,500 rent to own. So we've given them a 25-year mortgage at 3%. That should be making headlines, not all the negative stuff. Because today, there is a Mama Mboga who had no chance. Okay? The market cannot be able to provide a housing for them. So we've got a one-bedroom house, 600,000. You've got a two-roomed house, okay, that is going for about 1.3 million, right? 4,500. And the most expensive is 6,500 shillings a month.
Okay. Let's talk about the current, affordable housing structure, the implementation bit of it. Of course, many people keep asking about the 1.5%, the 0.5%. Tell us about that. How really is it going to work when it comes to implementation?
Right.
Yes.
So we have a couple of issues that we've agreed that we have a systemic problem,
yes,
right? Where you are doing 1,000 against 170,000. It means there's a problem. The problem is on what we call the demand side and the supply side of housing. Yes. On the supply side, there is no private sector solution that is going to provide, say, housing, for example, for Kibera, or even for the majority of Kenyans who earn less than 100,000 shillings. So why? Because as granted, investors are looking for a return.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with the kind of interest rates that we have and the kind of returns that we're talking about,
yes,
majority of Kenyans will never be able to get a house. That's why we said again the mortgage is 6 times than the rent.
Yes.
So that is the first issue. So how are we going to address that? We need to incentivize the developers so that they stop looking at Mama Mboga as the customer, but look at the fund as the buyer. So the fund will buy the house on behalf of Mama Mboga, right? In other words, we immunize the investor from the market risk. So we are taking 100% market risk. And that means then the fund will be left with Mama Mboga, and we will enter into an agreement with her based on her pocket. Remember, affordability is 30%. So if she can afford 2,500, we can extend that mortgage to 30 years. Yeah? And we give her at very low rates.
So who is going to, be paying this money? Because the general, what is going out, the information that is out there is that those who are in employment are the ones who are going to be contributing this money. Will they be beneficiaries of this house?
Absolutely. So first of all, for countries that have, progressive countries that have dealt with the issue of affordable housing, they have set up funds. And I can give you those examples. We talk about Mexico in former Navit, where employees contribute 5%. Our neighbors in Nigeria, Cameroon, we like to compare ourselves with Singapore. In 1967, when we were doing our Housing Act, Singapore imposed 20%, 22% on employees, 17% on employers.
Yes.
And I can give you the list. China is 5 and 5% contribution. Now, why do we start with employees? We start with the employees because what the fund requires is what we call a steady cash flow, so that an investor then can be able to invest. Last week in New York, we signed, because of that 1.5%, we signed with the UN and their investors to do 100,000 houses. It will never be possible if there is no going to be a fund that is going to show steady cash flow. So
this is a strategy to ensure sustainability of this particular fund?
Absolutely.
All right.
So, but the employee will benefit.
How so?
How will they benefit?
Yes.
So if you fall within the category, first of all, of the people who are most vulnerable, and we have divided them into 4 categories. Category number 1 is what we call social housing.
Yes.
These are people who earn between nothing and 15,000 shillings. Most of them are in the minimum wage.
Yes.
You qualify for what we call a social housing. Okay? If you earn 15 to 50,000, and by the way, that makes up 72% of all formally employed Kenyans are in that bracket. They will qualify for what is called a low-cost housing, okay, for up to 2 million shillings, right? If you earn between 50 and 100,000, you can go to a bank and get a mortgage, but it's still not affordable. So we call you're in what we call a mortgage gap, okay? So we will also get what is called a mortgage gap house. If you earn more than 100,000, you can still go to a bank and get a mortgage, all right? But you need a little bit of help. And that's why we've set up an institution that is going to give you, which is unheard of in Kenya, a fixed interest rate.
A fixed interest rate.
Fixed interest rate, okay? And we are, the numbers are being done, but we don't see it being more than 10%, okay? That surely for everybody will benefit. But also the other problem is tenure, all right? Today, most people finance their houses through SACCOs. We're going to be, and SACCOs, the problem with them is the short-term nature of the financing. So you take 7 years to build your house. With this program, you will be able to get now a mortgage for 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
And that is how every Kenyan then will benefit.
Okay. I want to take some questions from the viewers because I'm told we're running out of time. There is this one that it says, I'm a teacher and would retire next year. I built my residential house and others for income-generating activities. I'm comfortable. Why then do you want to tax me for your housing scheme, which I do not need? Why?
So let's address that issue. First of all, if your the contribution, okay, means that you have an option for 2 years. I mean, if she has 2 years to go to retirement, so it's earlier of 15 years or retirement. Now, the contribution is actually a tax structure because you, instead of seeing it as a tax, you're actually getting a tax deduction, okay? So it means that once she starts contributing, she pays less tax, okay? So the next 2 years, she pays less tax, but also she'll get a return, okay, if she elects to take out her money. But why are we saying it is compulsory for everybody? I think it is important for us to understand that when it comes to some of these social interventions, okay, for example, you pay VAT, or you pay, let's say you pay payroll tax. Part of that payroll tax builds our roads. It does not mean that you drive on all the roads that are built, okay? That is just how it works. And it is the same principle. But in this case, we're saying because it's a contribution. You either get a house. If you don't get a house, you take out your money at the earlier of retirement, okay, or 15 years, okay. Then you can even opt to take that money and allocate to your helper, to your child. So when your child comes out of university, graduates, has a degree and a house, that is fantastic. You've given your child a starter pack in life.
There is this one that is saying, why should workers who are remaining with 3 to 4 years retirement pay for housing, yet their contributions will be too minimal to earn them a house? I
think I've answered that question. I mean, it is universal. Everybody has got to contribute. I think the bigger question is how about the balance of Kenyans? They will also contribute. Okay, because if you are going to participate in this affordable housing, all right, and we are going to, there's a portal that is coming up, you'll need to register. Once you register, you need to start making a contribution. So those who are not in the formal employment are also going to contribute because you won't get a house if you're not contributing. So it is maybe, I think the focus has been so much on the employee and employer side, that we've forgotten that even those who are in the informal sector, they will also be able to contribute.
How will you be able to net them to contribute? Because the taxpayer is still looking for those.
But it's a carrot and a stick. If you don't contribute, you don't get a house. Okay? And they need houses more, right? Because they don't even have a financial solution because they are considered not bankable. Why? They've got lumpy cash flow. So if you take a Juakali person, their cash flows in 12 months are very lumpy. So they will not be able to go to a bank and get a mortgage. But under this program, with those lumpy cash flows, we will be able to get them a house. But they will need to contribute. So everybody then is, there's an equal chance for everybody to contribute.
For everybody to contribute. All right, I'm being informed our time is running out. But in terms of the land, where is it that you're going to source the land to put up these houses? And have you talked to county governments? And what is it going to cost?
Fantastic question. So one of the reasons why housing in Kenya is unaffordable and unavailable is just because of the issue of land. Land in Kenya is the most expensive in the continent, especially in Nairobi. So what are we doing? Government itself has a lot of land. We own a lot of land. We own some old estates, okay? So what we're going to do is that we are going, as part of our subsidy program, we are doing what is called land banking, okay? We have identified about 7,400 acres of land across the country. Today we have got 23 counties that have signed to join this program, meaning that they have identified land, okay, and they've said, bring that financing that you're busy signing and build those houses here. So first of all, it is everywhere in this country. All 47 counties will have affordable housing. So it's not just in Nairobi.
So they're going to demarcate land. They'll work with the national government to give land.
Yes, and we are giving counties a grant Yeah, all counties are what I talked about, the Kenya Urban Support, for them to be able to put the infrastructure so that they can be able to support those housing.
All right, lastly, I know my director is going to is telling me our time is really up, but I want to revisit the question about after you're done. Yeah, maybe you are remaining 5 years to retirement. You have been contributing. At the end of it, you have your house, so you really want your money. The question of interest then comes in, because you've been keeping my money for 5 years. Are you going to pay me back with interest?
Yes, that fund is going to be making a return. And so if you look at the finance bill, what it said is that you're going to get a return commensurate to what the fund is making. So it is a saving, it's tax deductible, all right? And you will get it back with more money on top.
All right.
Good.
I wish we will have you here next time again
Please
to once
do.
again look at these issues holistically, because we've really concentrated on
And
this, but
I
there are
want to
still more
say, I
questions.
want to say my parting shot.
Just look into the camera and speak to the Kenyan
My parting
people.
shot is that we dedicate ourselves to serve Kenyans. Those Kenyans have faces. We may never get an opportunity to meet them, all right? And sometimes it's a thankless job. But when you go to those slums and see that little girl who lives in a house with 5 men, some of them are uncles, and you can see she just seen too much in life. I think we need to say something has got to be done. Provision of housing is not a nice thing to say. It is important because majority of our people live in subhumane conditions. And that is why we've got to change that. Otherwise, this country, every 5 years, we are always going to have the majority of Kenyans who feel that they do not belong. That is why we've got to fix this problem. And I hope that you're going to be my partner in delivering that.
All the best.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure you're going to be able to do a commendable job, given at least you're creating awareness around what really is going to happen, because there are a lot of questions that Kenyans don't have the
and
information.
we're going to hit the road on public participation, so you're welcome. We're going to be going across the country, taking this message. But I think once Kenyans understand it is well thought out, it is not a perfect plan, but we must not let perfect be the enemy of good.
I think people are more worried if they don't, if they're not eligible for the housing, what happens to them?
Everybody's eligible.
At least you've put that into perspective.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is where we have to put a cap on perspective tonight. Our guest, Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, Charles Hinga, putting into perspective what really the government is doing in terms of affordable housing, creating awareness of how really this fund is going to work and why it is important for you and me to contribute for the sake of our country. This is where we end it. Regina Manyara Gitao is up next with the day's business.